So one of the worst things that can happen to a homeowner in the dead of summer is coming home or waking up to a unbearably hot house. Well, this past weekend that happened to us. So if you're stuck in a position like this, stay tuned and I'll take you through some simple troubleshooting steps to help you get your AC fixed faster. So this past weekend, we discovered at night that our HVAC system was not producing cold air anymore. So this was the night before my son's 7th birthday party and one of the hottest Junes that we've ever had here in Kansas City. It was 100 degrees that day. So we had to scramble to figure out what to do. So we really didn't discover this issue until nighttime when we had already put the kids to bed. So I ran around the house troubleshooting and diagnosing the issue, and thankfully I had access to some portable air conditioning units that I was able to borrow from work to keep the house cool enough so we could sleep. So the next morning, I got up and set out to fix the issue. Now, in today's video, I'm going to take you through some of the troubleshooting steps that I use when I diagnose a faulty air conditioning system. And hopefully it helps you get your air conditioning either back online faster or at least saves you some money on some service calls. Now, before we get started, a couple things I wanted to just put out there as warning, caveats, whatever you want to say. First thing is I'm not an HVAC tech. I have gone through some HVAC training as a previous job about a decade ago, and I've done some HVAC work in the field for that job, but I'm not a certified technician and honestly haven't done much HVAC work in the last decade. So if in doubt, make sure you seek out a professional. So at least with these troubleshooting steps, you should be able to either, if you can't fix it yourself, maybe speed up the technician service call and save you some money there. The second point is I'm not a certified electrician. I have gone through the National Electric Code back in 2012 and got certified, took the test on that, but I'm not up to date on anything, and I've never been an electrician or worked in the electrician world. So again, if you're in doubt, seek out a professional. I'm just giving you tips as a hobbyist and a DIYer, what things to check. Make sure you check your local codes and rules before you make any major electrical repairs. If you aren't comfortable, seek out a professional. But even if you call somebody, follow them around. It's a great opportunity to learn some new skills and maybe get yourself set up for the next time you run into the same problem. So basically, don't sue me. I'm just trying to help you guys out and give you some tips. And finally, all of these things I'm discussing are for here in the United States. Obviously, in different parts of the world, wiring colors are different, codes are different, types of air conditioning units are different. So make sure you check with your country's code and rules first before getting started to make sure there's nothing different. You can still use these tips as a guide, but obviously make it for your locality. All right, with those out of the way, next I'm going to give you some troubleshooting steps that I typically go through and what they might indicate to help you get to a solution faster. And then finally, the last part of this video, I'll take you kind of through the journey of going out and getting the part and repairing the piece to get my HVAC system working again. So if you know your specific issue and it is your start run capacitor free compressor, go ahead and jump to the time code here below and you can skip this first troubleshooting section and get right into the repair job. All right, so quickly we're going to go through some troubleshooting steps that I usually use to kind of figure out where the problem might be with my air conditioning system. Some of these you'll be able to fix on your own. Some of them you'll have to call a professional, but at least you'll know when you call the professional, kind of giving them an idea of what it might be that the problem is, and also potentially saving you some time on the service call, and which would save you some money. The first thing that they always tell you to check when it comes to air conditioning problems is your thermostat. Make sure your thermostat's on, and you also want to make sure the wiring is good on the back of the thermostat. It's not very often that your thermostat wiring is going to wiggle loose, but it's a quick and easy check. So you want to pop the thermostat off the wall and then get in there and make sure that all of the wires are connected appropriately. So what this would look like is if you tell your thermostat to call for cool and nothing happens. No fan runs, or the fan runs and the compressor doesn't run, or the compressor runs and the fan doesn't run, those sort of things. The next most common thing that you're going to run into is that your air filter is clogged. So if you have a thick air filter, like a high MERV air filter, and it gets clogged up with dust and allergens, it's going to reduce the amount of air that can flow over your evaporator coils and then cause the unit to freeze up and stop functioning. It needs all those little tiny fins to be exposed to allow the heat to be exchanged out of the air and into the Freon. So what you need to do is ask yourself, when's the last time you replaced your air filter? Each manufacturer of your air conditioner will tell you how often you need to replace your air filter. Most commonly, it's either monthly or quarterly. Some air filters that are the bag style can go up to a year, but make sure that you have been changing them. If you haven't changed it in the last quarter or so, go ahead and change it. It's a cheap fix. So typically what this is going to look like from a problem perspective is that you are inside evaporator coils are going to freeze up because there's not enough airflow to carry that cold air out and into the house. So you typically would start seeing your cooling capacity start to drop. So you'd notice that your airflow off of your vents are going to start getting less and less powerful, and less cold air is being transferred in. So if you open up your evaporator coil and it looks like the back of a freezer, then you know that you've got a problem there. So go ahead and replace that air filter. And if the unit is frozen up, you need to make sure to let your fan run and let it sit for 8 to 24 hours so those coils can thaw. All right, so the next most common problem is that your HVAC fan has failed. So this would be the blower fan that's actually in the bottom of your furnace and air conditioning combo unit. This is what pushes the air out when the system runs. When you tell the air conditioner to run, you don't hear anything on the inside. You don't hear that characteristic humming of the fan, and you put your hand over the vent and there's no air coming out. So that would indicate that maybe there's a problem with your HVAC fan. If you change your system to fan only, does it run? Do you hear the sound of it? Have you checked your thermostat in the first step? That's another thing to check here. Go ahead and go to your HVAC unit and make sure that the doors are securely closed on your access panels on the side. A lot of units have interlocks on there where if those doors are opened, the unit will shut off. So make sure the doors are closed and latched appropriately. Make sure you go and check that your air conditioner and HVAC unit breakers haven't tripped. This would indicate a larger problem. Finally, open up the inside unit and make sure the wiring looks good. This is a little bit more of an advanced troubleshooting step, and I'm not going to go into that in detail here. But if it does happen to be your fan, this is an easy thing to replace. Unbolt it and replace it. This would be something where you might want to go online and look for some fan troubleshooting guides. You can search online and take your inside unit model number and go search for a new part online. Like I said, the fan is one of the easier things to replace. Make sure the power switch is actually turned on the side of the HVAC. Most HVAC systems will have a power switch right on the side that can be flipped off if you're going to be doing service. Make sure that is in the on position. So the fifth thing we're going to do is, if you've already checked your filter and it's clean and your inside unit is still frozen up, that can mean a few things. You have bad airflow, which would indicate maybe a fan problem. Your system is too large for your house, which typically, if this is the first time this has happened and it's not a brand new house or brand new unit, this is probably not the cause of that. Is the outside temperature too cold? Say it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside and you're trying to cool your house down. If you don't have a big enough heat load outside, the heat exchange won't work and the inside unit will freeze up. If it happens to be a cold night outside, but you've got your house closed up and it's hot inside the house, open some windows up if you can. Finally, if you've checked all those things and your inside unit is still freezing up, you're probably low on Freon. So it's time to call a professional. Now, again, you can tell the professional when you call the service technician, you can give them all the troubleshooting steps that you've already done, and this will help speed up the service call quite a bit. Most service technicians really appreciate having that information given to them. It helps them get their job done faster, and it helps you get your house cool again much quicker. When it comes to anything Freon related, I typically don't advise working on that kind of stuff because it does require special licensing, special equipment, and a special skill set. So if your system is low on charge, then you might have a leak. If that leak is inside of one of the coil units on the inside, then you're probably going to have to replace the entire HVAC system unless it's under warranty. If it's a leak in the line somewhere, those are typically easy for the tech to identify using a special tool, and then they can seal it up and then recharge your system and get you back up and running again. Now, if you do have a frozen system and you do call a service technician, make sure you turn the unit off or just run the HVAC fan. Do not try to use the system while waiting for the tech to come out. That system needs to be completely thawed before they get out there, because if not, they're going to come out and tell you they'll be back the next day because they can do nothing with a frozen unit. So step 6, if you turn on your air conditioning system and it runs for a few minutes and then it shuts off, you still feel air moving, but the air is no longer cold. It's cold for the first few minutes and then it stops. Now it's time to go outside and check the outside unit. If the unit's not frozen up, then go outside, and if you have one of these non-contact thermometers, you can use it to check and see if the compressor is overheating, which typically will also indicate a low charge. Again, if there's anything with a low charge, then I would, or with the compressor, I would call out a service technician to help you with this problem. All right, so now for these last 2 items, step 7 and step 8, these are both to do with the outside unit and are kind of what started this whole video. These are the issues that I ran into with my unit. So for the first one is if you checked all the inside stuff and you head outside and you notice that when you tell the thermostat to run cold air, that the fan on top of the unit is not spinning or it's making an awful grinding noise, then you probably have a problem with the start run capacitor on the fan itself. Now this happened on my old house, and the nice thing about this particular problem is you can actually kickstart the fan and continue having it run 1 cycle while you go get the part. If you hear the compressor making noise, but the fan isn't running, then this probably means it's a capacitor for the fan. So this is gonna sound kind of crazy, but if you take a long stick or a long screwdriver and you use it to kick the fan on, you can actually, like I said, run the unit one time until it shuts off again, and that will allow that fan to run, because the start capacitor helps get that fan started. Once you get that started, then it's not using that capacitor anymore, and you're able to just run the unit. This is something where, take this with a grain of salt, but I have seen it done in the past, and it's worked for me. You take that stick, you put it down inside of the grates, and you push over fan to kickstart it, and then if the fan starts running, then you know for sure that it's the capacitor. So let your unit cool down, go out to the hardware store and buy that capacitor for your specific unit. I'll show you how to find the parts here in a second, but this is one of the easiest problems to fix. If that doesn't solve the problem, if it doesn't get started, then it's probably the outside fan. I haven't really seen an outside fan fail. In most units, they're pretty robust. Then it's probably time to either troubleshoot the fan itself or call a professional out. Now for the last issue, which is specifically what happened to me, this is the sound that the system makes when you run into this particular problem. Okay. So now if you can hear, the compressor isn't running, just the fan. So you heard that really short start. Yep. There, just did it again, a little whomp. That means the compressor is trying to start, but it's not able to. So what's happening here is the outside fan is running and the compressor attempts to start for just a second and then immediately shuts off again. And you can hear that short start of the compressor turning on and then back off again. Now, this indicates that there is a problem either with the compressor or with the start run capacitor or the compressor. Now, again, this is a very, very simple and very common problem. Actually, the guy in front of me in line at the HVAC store had the exact same issue with the exact same part. So you'll notice that the compressor will try to start. In my house, my lights flicker when that happens, and it'll continue doing that about every 2 minutes until you turn the unit off itself. So you won't have cold air blowing, but the fan inside's running, the fan outside's running, and you hear the compressor start and stop. That indicates that there might be an issue with the capacitor, and we'll go ahead and jump to the end of the video and take the steps that I completed to get that fixed. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to get the compressor to run without the capacitor, so as fast as you can, go get yourself a new part and then come back and replace it. All right, so now we're gonna show you how to very quickly find a particular part if you're looking for it. It's very simple. You can use a lot of great sites online. You just want to make sure to go outside, take a picture of your inside and outside units labels, so you have the model numbers on there, and then you can feed those into different repair websites to tell you which part you need. And then you can a lot of times source those locally if you need them very fast. All right, so right here I have a picture of my outside unit and its label on the side here. I've blurred out the serial number, but right here you'll see the model number for the unit itself, CA16NA048. That's the model number of the outside unit itself. So I'm going to pop over here to Repair Clinic, and I'm going to type that in and hit search. And then you'll see this will show you all the replacement parts that you need for this outside unit. Everything from the relay boards all the way down. On my unit right here, it's got a dual run capacitor. So this single capacitor both runs the fan and compressor. And in some units, you'll just see individual ones for each. My older unit, my old house, had a smaller capacitor for the fan, a larger capacitor for the compressor. So in this case, this is a dual capacitor, and it's a 45/5 style capacitor. That means there's a 45 microfarad side and a 5 microfarad side. If you were going to the hardware store or a HVAC supply store, you'd be asking for a 45/5 capacitor for a outdoor unit, or you could give them this part number and they'd be able to find you a similar unit if you need to buy one close to your house instead of ordering one online. But if you can spare the time, it'd be cheaper to buy it online and much easier. So now we're back at the house, and the first thing that we need to do after getting all of our tools together is make sure that we turn off the power to our cutoff switch or circuit breaker. Some houses may have a circuit breaker, some houses might have a cutoff switch. So one of these disconnects here. And so in my case, all you need to do is just grab this and pull it out, and that breaks the 240 circuit so that it can't obviously be energized. So the next step we got to do is take the panel off of here and get into where the electrical components are. So let me set this camera down, we'll get started with that. I've got a 5/16 inch bit on here. Make sure you put your screws in a safe place. All right, so let's get this panel off. All right, so this is the capacitor that we're going to replace today. This is the contact that the thermostat uses to call for coolant. So what we're going to do effectively is just remove this piece here and replace it with the one that I purchased today, and hope that fixes the problem. So this should be a pretty simple fix. So the first thing we want to do is get our digital multimeter out and make sure that there isn't any voltage in the system. So switching it to VAC, and then we'll go ahead and set this up here. So it's up and out of the way. So if we look here, this is where voltage is sourced from the house. It comes up through this whip here and it comes out of the bottom. So the bottom half here is where we're going to check for voltage. So right here on these two lugs, we're going to put our meter here and here, like that, and we see a nominal voltage. So there shouldn't be any voltage or current running through the system right now. So now that we've checked that, the next step is we're going to need to take the contacts off of the capacitor. Now, one thing to note with capacitors, they can remain dangerous even when there's no voltage coming into them because they're energy storage units. You have to be careful to make sure that you are not shorting out those contacts with your hands. So I'm gonna go grab a couple of tools and I'll be right back to short this out and make sure there's no additional charge in the system. All right, so a couple items for electrical safety that you need to make sure of is first, always make sure you test your circuits before you work on them. That's what we just did with the multimeter. You need to make sure 100% that there's no power in the system before you start working on it. The second thing is when you're doing any type of wiring, always use one hand to do the wiring. Try to avoid using two hands, so don't grab a screwdriver with one hand and then try to use your other hand to pull something. Try to always do your wiring with one hand, because if you were to complete the circuit and actually get hit with some power there, some voltage or current, it'll travel down one side of your body and hopefully avoid your critical organs like your heart. The last item is always make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes when you're doing electrical work. I also actually have some electrically insulated boots in the garage. I'm not wearing those right now because I'm not really doing any live wiring, but always make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes because you can inadvertently ground yourself if you're wearing open-toed shoes, and you don't want to be the wire in the circuit. So always make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes when you're doing wiring as well. Like I said before, when you're dealing with capacitors, one of the first things we need to do is remove the terminals that are connected to the capacitor. So make sure first thing you do is take a picture of the capacitor before you do any work. This way you have something to refer back to if you make a mistake later on or forget. I'm going to take my phone here, snap a quick picture just so I know the color codes and where everything goes. So now I'm going to loosen up the bolt on the side of the retention clip, and then we're going to go ahead and swap it out for the unit. So pretty similar, same type of lugs. So we're just going to move all those terminals over. Usually I have a 10-in-1 screwdriver, but I can't find it right now, so we're gonna just use a socket driver to take this off. One other item I want to make sure I point out is you should also check the voltage on the 24-volt side. There's less of a risk of it giving you any type of injury, but it's always a good idea to make sure you check those things. So again, putting your multimeter in voltage mode, just check to make sure that you have there's no voltage side of the 24-volt connector as it comes in to the contactor. So I'm going to wire this one lug at a time. Another thing when you're doing with capacitors is you want to make sure you short out the capacitor terminals to each other before you start touching it. That way you make sure there's no residual charge left in the capacitor. So let's take any type of screwdriver that has an insulated handle. Obviously that's something solid metal like a bar, so shock yourself. And then we'll just ground these terminals together, ground these terminals together, and ground these terminals together. Okay, so there should be no residual charge left in the capacitor to shock us. Now we can go ahead and pull the capacitor out and go ahead and finish up the wiring. Now, so I apologize for the angle here. I don't have a tripod behind me, so I'll have to use the GoPro. So I'm going to grab the terminal for the fan, which is the brown wire, and connect that in. And then we've got the other two terminals, the yellow terminal. Ooh, that's so nice. Over here. You can also use a pair of pliers to do this too. All right, so we'll take the affected old capacitor, take that out. Put the tension clip back in place. This is going to be a little bit difficult because this has got some tension on it. There it is, right there. Haha! Always make sure you keep it awareness where your bolts are. Make sure it's in the right direction. All right, there we go. We got the new capacitor in place, wired up. Let's check our drawing or our picture to make sure we don't mess anything up. Yep, looks pretty much exactly the same. Now I'm going to reinstall the shroud, and now let's reinstall the shroud back in place. And another handy thing that in case you ever run into problems, there's a wiring diagram on the inside of these shrouds. It's common across all HVAC systems. Super important if you ever have to troubleshoot something. Also has the gauges on here for subcooling and superheating. So if you're need that, it's also on the shroud itself. So now I have the shroud reinstalled. Let's make sure we take all of our tools off of the unit itself because we don't need any of this stuff shaking into the unit. All right, so she's going to go flip the inside switch on. When she does that, I will reinstall the power. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and reinstall the disconnect switch. We're gonna bring power back into the system. All right, here we go. Switching to Coil. And there we go. That is the sound of victory. Yes, that's a good sound. That sound means the compressor is running. It didn't short cycle, it didn't shut off. Let's go inside and check and see if we got cold blowing air. All right, so I just went inside and confirmed with the wife that everything is working fine. So it did turn out that that particular issue is the start run capacitor for the compressor on the outside unit. Okay, so there you go. I hope this video was helpful and helps you troubleshoot your AC if it runs into problems this summer. So this is a format that you like to see more kind of DIY fix-it videos or more kind of vlog, like on the job type of videos. Please let me know in the comments below. So if you're a person who just randomly found this video on YouTube and is not a smart home enthusiast, hopefully take encouragement that I was able to solve this problem by digging through various blogs and different websites, watching a few videos myself, and I was able to apply that plus the knowledge I have to solve this issue with my air conditioning. So like usual, if you thought this video was helpful, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell. I've got some new videos coming out this summer. I'm going to shoot for once a week if I can keep up the rhythm. And if you didn't find this video useful, give it a thumbs down. But if you're watching the video to this point anyway, you probably already liked it. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you all in the next video.